So I got all the suspension components off. I'm having a little geeky airlines drive me nuts. I'm having a little trouble getting this inner tie rod off. The other side came apart with a big pair of channel locks. This side doesn't want to, so I'm going to have to go to the shop and get a big ass wrench to turn it off. I don't have a wrench that big. So basically what I'm doing is I'm using this needle scaler here, which I just unplugged. So this is a this is a needle scaler, also known as a noisemaker. I bought this one at Harbor Freight a couple years ago after doing well, actually before, when a buddy of mine bought a Jeep that was, the frame was covered with all that bubbly nasty rust. So I bought one after using another friend of mine's, and this thing is worth its weight in gold. There's no better way other than like real heavy duty blasting with like a real heavy aggregate to get some of this crazy thick, I call it black rust, out of these little nooks and crannies. I can't blast this because it's inside my garage, and I don't, it's a mess. Blasting's a mess. This isn't much better, but this works pretty good for what I'm doing. And all I'm doing is I'm just cleaning off the real heavy rust. I'm just going to hit it real quick with a piece of sandpaper. There's a little piece of glue over there. I'm going to take off a sticker, like just like a piece of 80. Just real quick, rub it off with the sandpaper, and then spray it down with some brake clean to get the oil and shit off of it. And then I'm just going to spray it with black rust converter. Hands over there. It's Rust-Oleum. It's purely to clean it up. Purely so when I go put it back together, it just looks better than it does. I mean, I'm not doing the inside of the frame rails. I'm not doing, you know, I'm doing the underside a little bit, but I'm not going crazy. This isn't a restoration. This is just a clean it up project. Part of why I'm doing it at home too, because if I did this at the shop, I wouldn't have time to do all this stuff. I'd have to be done already. So I'm just kind of, you know, nailing away at it. See if I can. Yeah, there's a spot right there. Let's see if I can get the camera a little closer. So you can see this real bubbly rust right here. I probably shouldn't have the camera this close, but it's it is what it is. So you can see that real bubbly, nasty rust right there. And I'm just going to do it real quick and just knock a little bit off. You might want to, well, I'm going to mute this because this thing is just crazy loud. There's my brake line. Huh. I broke my tool. Harbor Freight strikes again. And I just squeezed the roll pin back in. Alright, that's enough. So as you can see here, kinda, I painted the frame rails, I painted all the attachment points. I just used this Rust-Oleum rust reformer. I don't think I've ever used this particular product, but I've used different ones in the past. Eastwood makes it. It's a rust encapsulator. To be honest with you, I don't really
I don't really trust any of this stuff. I mean, it works. They all work about the same. Really, the only way to stop rust is to completely strip the parts to bare metal, put zinc phosphate coating on them, and then prime them up. Or put a zinc chromate or a phosphorus etch on them, hit them with a zinc chromate primer, and then paint them with a high quality epoxy paint. I didn't do that. I bead blasted them. I used a self-etching primer out of a spray can, and just spray balm enamel duplicolor. I did that on these. These are the brake caliper brackets. I did that the last time I did the brakes on this truck, and that was probably, I guess, a little bit over a year ago. And I'm pretty happy with the way that this held up. So, because this takes the most heat, the most abuse, short of the brake caliper or the brake rotor itself. And I'm pretty impressed with the way that this held up. It held up good enough for me, and that's the way I'm just going to do the rest of it. So I'm not going to be able to video. Well, yeah, I mean I could, but I'm not really into moving the camera around a whole lot. So I'm going to put the rest of I'm going to put the torsion bar in first. I'm just going to kind of lay it in there. Then I'm going to put the lower control arm in. Then I'm going to start building the rest of the suspension system. Lower control arm, the axle is going to go back in. Yeah, lower control arm, axle, upper control arm, spindle with the bearing already installed. I got the bearings yesterday. Then I'm going to put the shock in, and then I'm going to torsion or tighten the torsion on the or tighten the torsion bar. And then I'll put the tie rod in. I got to remember to grease these because these tie rods actually have grease nipples on them, which the factory ones didn't. I wish I had a machine shop here so I could drill and tap all of the bushings for grease fittings. I'm a little hesitant to do that for a couple reasons. One is it's not really going to work all that great because the bushings themselves don't have any way for the grease to get into them. And I drive this on the beach. I was looking through my piles of shit here, and I can't find my dry lube, which I was going to spray in between the fitments here. If I grease them, which I might put a little grease on them, they're going to attract sand and road grime and shit like that. I had a little bit of rust up on the firewall here. I just hit it with the rust converter and sprayed paint over it. I'm not going to go crazy fixing it. The other side actually has a hole, which when I get to the other side, I'm going to take a serious look at it and decide whether or not I want to, whether or not my other repair worked. I kind of cheated a little bit when I got into the other side. I literally just put some rust reformer over the, knocked the loose paint off, put some rust reformer over the hole where it was, and packed it full of silicone. We'll see how that held up. That was probably a year ago, if not a little bit longer, when I did the exhaust manifold. I got into that because I had to take the inner fender out. So that's it for right now. The next it'll be short of different parts, steps of the process. I need to clean up the hardware. I'm just going to hit them on the wire brush and put a little primer on them. I'm not going crazy with the hardware.